I made a video on what would happen if the Viltrumite Empire tried to invade the Earth in a Nasuverse. And let's say the Nasuverse came out on top. However, Thragg seemed to have not liked my decision and decided to invade the Earth all by himself. However, this time, instead of everything the Nasuverse has to offer, only the heroic spirits and counter guardians will be facing off against Thragg this time around. So we'll see how that goes. But before we begin, I want to make one thing clear. Power scaling in the Invincible universe isn't always consistent. Characters will have insane feats in one moment, and then struggle in situations that don't always line up perfectly with those same feats. It happens a lot, and Thragg is no exception. So for the sake of this video, I'm working under the assumption that Thragg is at his absolute peak, his best showings, and everything we know about him pushed to his logical limit. Anyways, Thragg is a pure-blooded Viltrumite, a race bred for conquest where only the strongest survive. He was born on Viltrum and raised from birth to become the ultimate warrior, trained in combat for thousands of years and eventually becoming the Grand Regent. Thragg has elite genetics, extreme training, and centuries of warfare experience, a pure physical monster with overwhelming strength, durability, and speed, comfortably in the relativistic range, but arguments were higher depending on interpretation. He's also able to react to energy-based attacks and fight opponents who can cross massive distances through space in short time frames. His strength and durability sits at least in the continental to multi-continental range, with high-end interpretations pushing him closer to small planet. He's torn apart other Viltrumites with ease, overpowered both Invincible and Omni-Man, and even survived fighting in extreme environments like near the surface of the sun, though not without taking damage. On top of that, his stamina is absurd. He fought battle beasts for days in a brutal, drawn-out war of attrition. If it were purely about raw stats, speed, power, and durability, Thragg will absolutely match or dominate many servants before they meaningfully respond. But the Nasuverse doesn't operate on raw stats alone. In the world of the Nasuverse, heroic spirits are not just fighters, they're legends given form. The real power comes from the myths they embody, the rules baked into their abilities, especially their noble phantasm, which often bypasses conventional durability entirely. Most servants aren't casually throwing out planet-level punches in their base form, but they don't really need to. Their physical stats generally fall in a hypersonic to relativistic range, with certain abilities or bursts pushing them even higher. So yes, in a straightforward melee exchange with no abilities involved, Thragg's physical abilities lets him match or even edge out most servants in a one-on-one duel. But a problem arises once abilities come into play. Take Gilgamesh and his Gates of Babylon. He'd open the fight by launching a barrage of noble phantasms from every direction, constantly adjusting angles and timing to pressure the opponent. This isn't random spam. He actively probes defenses and adapts, as shown in his fights with Heracles. Thragg's speed will let him evade a large portion of these attacks early on. Hell, you could probably argue that he dodged all of them, but the sheer volume makes it increasingly difficult. This is especially dangerous when you consider the unique effects of each noble phantasm. Gilgamesh's personality plays a role here too. He's arrogant, dismissive, and unlikely to take Thragg seriously at first, but if Thragg closes the distance, which is very in character for how he fights, Gilgamesh may panic and escalate to bring out Ea. This isn't a simple destructive blast. Ea's ability, Enuma Elish, creates a localized rupture in space-time, tearing apart the structure of the world in front of it. It distorts reality itself. Thragg has shown no clear resistance to that kind of attack. If Gilgamesh reaches this point, Thragg is dealing with something outside the rules he's used to. Excalibur also operates with the same realm of power, although it varies depending on who you ask. As a divine construct, a weapon to defend the world. Under normal conditions, Artoria is limited by her own mana or the mana of her master, so she can't use it endlessly. But in scenarios where the planet itself is threatened, the limitations can be reduced as the external energy of the planet can support her output. The result is a massive beam of energy that carries immense destructive power, enough to destroy a continent if it was allowed. Thragg will likely evade or endure initial blasts thanks to his speed and durability, but repeated exposure at that level will begin to wear him down. His regeneration and endurance are incredible, but they aren't limitless, especially under sustained, high output attacks backed by something larger than the user herself. Then there's Heracles, who presents a completely different kind of challenge. His noble phantasm, God Hand, grants him 12 lives, each tied to his legend. Every time he's killed, he resurrects, and after each revival, he gains resistance to whatever killed him before. On top of that, attacks below a certain threshold simply fail to affect him. Thragg's usual approach is to overpower and destroy, but that kinda runs into a wall here. I'm pretty sure he could absolutely kill Heracles multiple times, but doing so repeatedly without relying on the same method becomes incredibly difficult. That said, Thragg isn't just brute force. In his fight with Battle Beast, he showed adaptability and tactical thinking over extended period battle. It's possible he could figure out how God Hand works and work through it, but it would be a long and exhausting fight that leaves him significantly worn down. And Heracles isn't really dumb either. It is very possible, or even likely, that Heracles could wear down Thragg before finishing him off. Even outside these top tier examples, the pressure keeps stacking. Emiya can deploy unlimited blade works, filling the battlefield with projectile weapons that mimic the properties of other noble phantasms. Thragg's speed helps him avoid individual strikes, but constant multi-directional pressure increases the likelihood of damage over time. And then we get into the really tricky hacks that straight up ignore normal durability. Medusa's mystic eyes of petrification work through sight alone. Just like the legends, it can gradually or instantly turn its target into stone, depending heavily on the target's mana rank and special resistances. Thragg, having no mana whatsoever, is extremely vulnerable to this ability. If caught by it, he'd either be temporarily stunned or instantly turned to stone. Karna's Vasavi Shakti is his trump card, a one-use divine spear forged from the thunder god Indra's power. When he releases its true name, it transforms into a god-killing lance of pure light and destructive energy. It incinerates on a conceptual level, being able to put down any being, no matter how mighty, even if they're a god, divine beast, or say, an alien. Thragg can handle extreme heat and impacts thanks to his sun exposure feats, but this wasn't for an extended period of time. This noble phantasm is considered one of the strongest single target noble phantasms in lore. If Karna charges and fires it, Thragg lacks the clear resistance to being conceptually burned away by divine wrath. Ozymandias' noble phantasm, pocket dimension manifesting as a colossal pyramid temple. Once you're inside or near it, you'll be hit with curses that effectively lower your stats. Even the most powerful servants are unable to resist this effect. Ozymandias is also mortal, and within this temple, he cannot die as long as he exists within his noble phantasm. Thragg could tank the temple's raw physical blasts, but the temple's conceptual power punishes its intruders, slowly eroding even godlike beings, while Ozymandias remains safe on his throne. This is literally only a handful of servants Thragg would have to battle. There are hundreds of servants, some of which have multiple variants, each with their own unique noble phantasms and other skills. Again, Thragg isn't really used to fighting opponents who can manipulate causality, manipulate curses, and much more. Although it's not like the Invincible universe is lacking characters like this. And that's before we even talk about the biggest factor, Alaya, the counterforce. It's basically humanity's collective will to survive. If Thragg shows up, an intruder who conquers and destroys worlds, Alaya would kick in like the immune system and automatically scales its response to whatever is needed to remove the danger. It deploys agents like heroic spirits or counter guardians. These get backed up by the planet, so they can go all out without limits from the master. The system might summon a group of servants or heavy hitters whose abilities work well against fast, ultra-durable brutes. Things like conceptual binding, reality warping magecraft, or overwhelming magical attacks. So here's the honest picture. Thragg stays an absolute monster throughout. His speed lets him control the start of many battles. His durability means a lot of standard attacks barely scratch him. He could absolutely take down plenty of servants one-on-one, but the longer the fights drag on, the more the Nasuverse stacks the deck with layered conceptual hacks, endless variety, adaptations, and literal planetary backup, all to grind away at him. Thragg hasn't even fought the Grand Servants yet, who would absolutely be his worst matchup. Grand Servants are the absolute pinnacle of the 7 main servant classes. Thragg will run into straight nightmares like Grand Assassin vs Hassan, whose noble phantasm Azrael lets him swing a sword for a single decapitating strike that conceptually enforces instant death on anything it hits. No amount of toughness or regeneration saves you. Or Grand Lancer Romulus turns the very idea of civilization's unstoppable expansion into a lance of radiant light that tears the world itself apart and blasts towards stars. In the end, you've got the ultimate brute force physical peak, meaning a world built to handle extinction level threats.